to make a brief statement, just bringing everybody up to speed. Then I'll answer any questions. Okay. As you all know, yesterday the District Attorney's Office made a decision to drop the charges on our identified and charged suspect. We were notified about that decision yesterday. I've personally spoken, obviously, with Mayor Turner, briefed him yesterday on the case and where we're at on the case, and made sure that he understood how we got to this point. The other piece is that I've spoken with the district attorney, talking about the pros and cons of proceeding on the case. I've actually reached out to the Flores family, and first and foremost, again, I wasn't here when it happened, but I remember as a father of a 9-year-old who was 8 when this incident happened, seeing this case occur when I was in Austin as the police chief, and nothing touches your heart more as a police officer than the taking of any life, but especially the taking of a young child. And in this case, a young 11-year-old boy that is, again, at the prime of his life, full of innocence with his whole future ahead of him, for someone to brutally attack him and kill him the way he did. I wasn't a member of this community, but I assure you that even from close to 300 miles away, it touched my heart as a parent and as a police officer. Yesterday and today, I've reached out to the Flores family, because I want them to know that this case remains a high priority for us. I want them to know that we still believe that this is a suspect that is a suspect that obviously was charged for a reason, and we want them to know that we are going to continue to pursue this case, redouble our effort, and we're not going to stop until we get them justice, and because that's what any parent would want, and that's certainly what we want. The reason that this case is where it's at today is that obviously, from my perspective, I think from the police department's perspective, we are living at a time when there's something called the CSI effect, and this is just my perspective as a police executive. And we know that we have CSI Miami, New York, LA, Las Vegas, and in those CSI programs, every week in a 1-hour span, there's a crime is committed. Usually it's a violent crime. Crime is investigated, suspects is identified, suspect is arrested, charged, and almost without exception, there's always DNA evidence. In this case, the Houston Police Department, after we made the arrest last year, in this case, we actually had gathered some evidence and sent it to the Department of Public Safety for analysis. The analysis came back with no DNA. Now, it's important to note that, as far as I know, and my homicide lieutenant and homicide chief and captain are here, no DNA evidence was found on our victim, and no DNA tying the suspect to that scene was found on the items recovered from the suspect. No DNA. That means that we didn't discover DNA from a third unknown suspect that's not either the victim or the suspect. So that's a really important thing to note. So the District Attorney's Office has made a decision to drop the charge and postpone for now pursuing with this case pending further investigation, because the concern that she shared with me and the family and Kimog shared was that if we go at this point without any DNA, obviously, evidence, that there's a probability or a strong likelihood or potential for either the court or in a jury trial for the suspect to be deemed to be innocent, and once you're or not guilty, and once you are found not guilty, double jeopardy attaches, and obviously you can never pursue the case. So rather than pursue the case at this time and go to trial, we have been asked to further investigation, to continue our investigation, to see if there are any stones that we've left unturned in this case. I will tell you that our homicide detectives are back at work trying to uncover additional information, additional evidence to pursue this case. They still feel that the suspect that was arrested and charged is the appropriate suspect and the most likely suspect in this case. But again, the decision to pursue is not ours. We're not the prosecutors, just like we're not the charging. We don't make the decision to file the charge. It's obviously the district attorney's office. And so to this community, we want you to know that, especially to the community, one of the things that I absolutely know without a doubt is that people talk. Criminals talk. Criminals have loose lips. There are people out there, person or persons, that have information on this case. They can help us further solidify this case. They can help us pursue whatever evidence is out there in whatever direction it takes us in this case. A little boy was brutally murdered, and I'm speaking to you. Please come forward. I mean, there's obviously a reward from Crime Stoppers, but that's not what should motivate you. What should motivate you is to be part of bringing justice to the Flores family, to that sweet little boy, and peace to our community. So I just urge folks that may have information to dig deep into your heart. And we know what happened with the shooting of, I think it was Little Messiah in the Maryland area down there. People came forward. Go back in time. Know what you know. Figure out what you know and come forward. This community deserves it, and the Flores families deserves it. And so the last thing I will say in closing is this. Just remember, we investigate over 300 homicides a year in this city. This year, thankfully, as of today, 37 fewer community members have died. 37. That's the equivalent of going over an entire month in the biggest city in this country without a homicide. And I think that that speaks to the collective commitment of this department, despite the fact that it is such a lean organization, that we know we have our budget challenges in our city. It goes as to the commitment of our mayor and council to support us the best they can with the cards that they've been handed with this, this revenue cap and some of the other issues that we have that really makes it difficult for our city. But this also speaks volumes as to the relationship that we have with this community, where people sometimes might be slow out of the chute to come forward, but they come forward and they cooperate with members of law enforcement, and they cooperate with the Houston Police Department, and we secure justice for the victims of these suspects. And lastly, for our police officers, just remember this: we are information gatherers. We are evidence gatherers. We go where the evidence takes us. In this case, a witness identified initially a different suspect. We actually made an arrest on that suspect a year ago. Through further investigation that this department conducted after speaking with the suspect and further investigation, we were able to determine that suspect had a solid alibi that was verifiable through evidence, and we released that suspect. So again, we are not there. Our folks follow the evidence. Yesterday I had a reporter talking to me about law enforcement and wrongful arrests or wrongful convictions, and let me just say this: that is not the right term to use in policing. Wrongful to me evokes the thought that the police intentionally arrested somebody they knew they didn't have evidence on, that they knew was innocent. Wrongful to me evokes the idea that we uncover in any criminal case, and I'm not talking about this case specifically, but just investigations in general, the idea that the law enforcement agency comes into and uncovers information that's exculpatory and they don't share it. That's wrongful. Most cases what occurs is it's erroneous. Erroneous because a witness comes and looks at a six-pack or at a live lineup, and they erroneously pick the wrong person, as happened in the first instance in this case. And by erroneous, I mean that everybody acted in good faith, but we all know through the studies that sometimes witness information can be mistaken. It can be mistaken identity, and again, it can be erroneous or mistaken identification of a suspect. And so The work continues. We're not going to rest. My heart aches for the Flores family and for that entire community and our extended community because as of right now, until we have somebody arrested, charged, and obviously tried and convicted, we're going to, we know that there's a killer out there in this community. So with that, I'll open up to any questions.
Chief said there's a killer out there in the community. You still believe that this guy is the guy. How can you keep tabs on him and keep him in case you develop new evidence?
Well, we're not going to talk about our investigative strategies or what we're going to do moving forward. But this guy, I think, knows right now that he's pretty high profile. His picture is, his image is all over this community, and quite frankly, I'm not that concerned about him specifically, our charged suspect. I'm just concerned about picking up the ball and starting to move forward towards trying to get the suspect charged, tried, and convicted.
So how do you do that, Chief?
We're back at work. Our homicide team's already got the case file out. They're already strategizing and moving forward. But again, we're not going to talk about our specifics. I know that at the end of the day, most cases are not made. Many cases are not made on DNA evidence. It's people that allow their conscience to be their guide. People that know something, see something, learn something, that come forward. And I believe ultimately we are going to uncover that person, hopefully through this media corps that will send out a plea from myself on behalf of the Flores family to come forward. There is no way that in a year, give or take, right? There's no way that in this much time that has passed that there aren't more people out there that have additional information on this case that can be that tipping point to move forward to trial and the charging of the suspect.
Chief, do you agree with the decision to dismiss?
You know, it's a tough call for the DA. We feel that we had a good suspect, but ultimately it is not our decision to make. The only thing that I asked the DA, and I think they did that, is that our number one responsibility, I think, as a society, our number one responsibility as a police department, and the number one responsibility of the criminal justice system and the DA's office is to the Flores family. And the only thing I ask of the DA is that, hey, consulting us is, whether you consult us or not, that's one issue, but please talk to the family, because I think that as a father, I'd want to be part of the conversation when decisions that impact this type of issue and decision, that we should be part of it, and I think that that conversation took place.
Chief, is there any tension between the police department and the DA's office? It didn't seem like HPD was there yesterday during that press conference announcing this high-profile news in this case.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, there's a lot of, in this country, there's a lot of, people can have it both ways, right? There's a lot of folks that promote the idea that the DA and the police department are, you know, lockstep, joined at the hip. The DA made a decision on the prosecution of this case. That is what she was elected to do, and that's what her office does. And personally, the appearance of independence, I think, is important, especially at a time in our nation's history where there are accusations that police and DAs, especially as it relates to use of force, are lockstep. Our job is to investigate, document, prepare a report, investigative reports, submit the evidence in the report. Their job is to assess and prosecute. We're very independent organizations, and we're not always going to agree on everything, but we look at things through different perspectives and different prisms.
Chief, ¿cree que sus oficiales hicieron un buen trabajo recolectando la evidencia y cree que el sospechoso sí es el que cometió el homicidio?
Sí, dame un poquito de agua, un momentico. Yo pienso, para nosotros, para empezar, quiero que la comunidad sepa que ayer me he puesto en contacto llamando a la familia de Flores, y mi corazón, el corazón como padre y como policía y como jefe de la policía está con esa familia. Es muy doloroso saber que un niño de 11 años fue asesinado con una persona que no tiene conciencia. Mis investigadores todavía piensan que el sospechoso que estaba cargado con el homicidio del joven Flores sí es el sospechoso, pero la investigación va a continuar. No vamos a descansar, no vamos a parar hasta que no tenemos justicia para un niño que estaba al empezar de su vida y para una familia que tuvo que enterrar a su angelito porque una persona para mí que no tiene conciencia que es un monstruo lo mató. Yo tengo mucha esperanza que ha pasado como un año, que todavía tenemos testigos que saben, que tienen información, y yo creo que y mi esperanza es que su conciencia lo hagan venir adelante y darnos más información.
A este hombre lo dejaron libre en la madrugada. ¿Cree que es un peligro para la sociedad? ¿Lo van a mantener vigilado?
Yo no voy a hablar de nuestras tragedias, pero este hombre sabe bien claro que esta comunidad entera de 5.6 millones de habitantes en esta región saben quién es, y yo estoy con bastante seguro que él no va a hacer nada estúpido ahorita, sabiendo que la comunidad entera sabe que es una persona que sigue siendo un sospechoso en este crimen.
Chief, dos cosas. Él sigue siendo el único sospechoso en el caso y otra pregunta más. ¿Qué necesitan las personas que hayan visto algo, que hayan sido testigos, que hayan escuchado algo del caso? ¿Qué es lo que necesitan
Tienen
hacer?
que ponerse en contacto con el Departamento Policíaco de Houston. Acuérdese, para pensar, el Crime Stoppers va a darle un reward, no sé cuánto es, no me acuerdo ahorita. What's the reward up to? De $5,000. Pero para mí eso no es lo que importa. Lo que importa es nuestra conciencia como padre, como vecino, como ser humano. Yo sé que hay personas que han visto algo, yo sé que hay testigos, y les suplico que adelante, que aquí estamos para buscar esta justicia.
Chief, was it unusual that there was no DNA, none of his DNA found on Josue's body, none of Josue's DNA found on his body? If you recall, it was such a bloody...
Yeah, but think about it. They didn't find any DNA. Okay, so, DNA is but a piece of the puzzle. But I think from the DA's perspective, again, I don't want to talk for the DA, if you talk to prosecutors, you talk to cops, this DNA effect is real, where, we might have 3 witnesses or 5 witnesses, and then a jury will say somewhere in the country, hey, but what about the DNA? Because that's what we see on television. So, it's a tough case, but it's a case we're not going to give up on, and it's a case that we're going to continue to pursue, and I'm hopeful that at some point we'll have an arrest, a charge, an arrest, a trial, and a conviction.
I
want to say a couple more.
Who analyzed the DNA?
Department of Public Safety.
Did it seem like it took a while to get it back?
Yeah, that is a long while, but it's a big state with a lot of crime in our state, and they have some pretty advanced equipment, and so we wanted to make sure we're the ones that submitted it. We wanted to send the evidence to the lab that has the most sensitive equipment, that has the highest probability of finding any DNA evidence.
Chief, why should the community have any confidence that if you do end up picking up someone else who fits the description, or an eyewitness says they thought they saw this person, why should the community have any faith that this is the right guy this time?
Well, hey guys. Well, first of all, the DA hasn't said this is not the right guy. Okay, just remember something. We have a criminal justice system where it's not a kangaroo court. There's a burden of proof that has to be met that is beyond the reasonable doubt. And if you move forward, understanding what the standard is, and you as a prosecutor or the DA's office of the prosecutors aren't certain that they can reach that standard, they've made a tactical decision to postpone pursuing a trial to see if we can give additional information. So let's not make any conclusions. At the end of the day, everyone is presumed to be innocent in this country until you're charged, tried, and convicted by a jury of your peers or by a judge if you choose to have a trial, a bench trial. And so the bottom line is that the Houston Police Department homicide detectives do a phenomenal job of investigating some really tough cases. I've only been here 7 months, and I've already seen some really tough cases where they've done a great job. If you think about the number of cases that they've investigated throughout the history of this department, and how many cases the first suspect that they obtain and charge ends up being tried and convicted. I guarantee you the cases in where a suspect turns out to be, again, not because of wrongful actions on the part of the police, but because of mistaken identification by a witness or erroneous identification, we end up releasing him. And let's not lose sight that in those cases, it is 9 times out of 10 the investigation, the continued investigation of our investigators that leads to those suspects' charges being dropped. And I think people forget that. It is, we as police officers follow the evidence. We don't control the evidence. We try everything, we do everything we can to try to uncover the evidence. We try everything we can to find witnesses. We make a good faith effort to do those things and then interview the witnesses thoroughly, right? And then wherever that evidence takes us, we present it to the DA. They do their job, which is to assess the evidence and make a decision on how to proceed in terms of charges. Okay?
It's not the near north side where they had the regularly scheduled meeting, but this was obviously.
Yeah, it was really interesting timing.
Yeah. What do you say to reassure people?
I can't hear you.
What do you say to reassure these people?
Well, listen, we should be terrified. This was a pretty terrifying in terms of the violence that was committed here. It was a pretty horrific incident, and it's a pretty sickening incident. But we never lose sight of we're in a big city, and this country is a violent country. We all have to always be vigilant. And I don't care if you're in the safest place in the city. I don't care if you're in the safest place in the city. You know, violence and crime will eventually. None of us live on an island. Eventually, we'll visit any neighborhood in our country. So we have to. The safety of this community relies on 2 things: the men and women of the Houston Police Department and our colleagues in law enforcement. But our number one force multiplier, especially when you're only 5,100 officers in a city this size, is the community itself. Neighbor watching out for neighbor. People being nosy about what's going on in their block. You know, the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it really does take a village to keep a community safe. And one of the things that I really love about Mayor Turner, that he talked about it when he announced me as the police chief, that now the police chief, our leadership cadre, and our officers alone cannot make this city safe. Ultimately, it's the community itself standing together, watching out for one another, being our eyes and ears. And in this case, I'm convinced somebody out there knows more information and they still haven't come forward. I urge you to come forward. Okay, guys? Thank you very much. Appreciate you all. And by the way, I'm hoping to have a meeting maybe next week, Northside, to come by and say hi to folks. I would have gone yesterday, but I already had a commitment that I couldn't get out of. But I think we're going to be there hopefully next week. Set something up.
Sí, gracias. A la comunidad del Barrio Norte, ¿qué le diría usted a raíz de esto?
Bueno, de nuevo, esto fue un crimen que es tan violento, es un monstruo el que cometió este crimen, pero acuérdese que al fin del día lo que va a mantener la seguridad en esta comunidad es el Departamento Policiaco de Houston, nuestros colegas, pero al fin del día lo más importante es que seamos buen vecinos, que prestamos atención, que nos apoyemos unos a los otros. Cuando vemos algo sospechoso, que llamen a la policía, que al fin del día, cuando tenemos en esta ciudad 2.3, 2.4 millones de habitantes, tomando ser su parte de ser los ojos de su vecino, de su familia y de su departamento policiaco, vamos a estar más seguros. Así que no vamos a descansar, vamos a seguir adelante y con el favor de Dios, este sospechoso, este monstruo, lo vamos a llevar a un juicio y lo vamos a mandar a la prisión donde debe estar. Gracias. All right, guys, thank you.